are asked to graph and determine the 6 characteristics of this parabola. So it is a y-squared problem. So in your notes, we will always refer back to the y-squared section. So find that right away so we know what we're referring to. Here's my y-squared section, okay? I'll be referring to this portion. So first I have to isolate the y-squared. So I need to move this to the opposite side. So I'm going to divide by -2. Y-squared equals -1/2. Let's see if I can write that better. We'll write it over here so there's no confusion. Y-squared equals -1/2 x. Okay, so I rewrote this equation as y-squared equals -1/2 x after I isolate the y-squared. Then I'm going to take, just like you see as the first equation here, I'm going to write down y-squared equals 4px. Underneath it, it's y-squared equals -1/2 x. By substitution, I can now set these two equal to one another. So 4px equals -1/2 x. We're going to isolate the p, but before we do that, notice that with y-squares, it's either going to open left or right. Keep that in mind, opening left or right. So divide by 4x, divide by 4x. So p is now isolated. Grab your calculator and take -0.5 and divide it by 4. What do we get for a fraction? Anybody? -1/8? Do we agree with her? Yes? -1/8. So my first question is, does this open to the right or does it open to the left based on our p-value? Left, because our p is negative. So p equals -1/8. Now our focus can be determined by this equation. It's p0. So our focus is -1/8, 0. And our directrix is x equals -p. So x equals negative and then -1/8. And we know two negatives turn into a positive. Okay, so let's make ourselves a little table, a little graph here. Take 1 divided by 8, and you can see that 1 divided by 8 is what? Is it 0.125? Okay, so keep in mind this is like a -0.125. All right, so let's start with the focus. The focus is at a -0.1250. So here's -1/2. It's going to be like right here. And then we're going to have a directrix of x equals 0.125. So x equals 0.125. And I'm going to make a chart. Remember that if you take your pencil and pen and I say go, and at the same rate you begin to move towards each other, the midway point between the focus and the directrix will always be the vertex. The midway point between the focus and the directrix will always be the vertex. So the vertex occurs at 0, 0. I'm going to come back up to my original equation. Okay, I'm going to look at this section right here. This section right here. So let's go with, since there's no fractions involved, let's go with 1. If I plug in 1, 1 squared is 1. 1 times -2 is -2. So go over -2 and go up 1. Now let's plug in a -1 for the y. -1 squared is +1. 1 times -2. 1 times -2 is -2. So I'm going to go over -2 but down 1. All the way here, it should be going to 0, 0. And there's our parabola. Now, what is the equation for the axis of symmetry? The equation for the axis symmetry, since this is not translated, is y equals 0. So y equals 0 would be cutting the parabola in half, making it symmetrical.